for the Republican showdown.
Congressman Rodney Davis, representing Illinois' 13th District, speaking to us from Decatur. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
The thing I mostly dislike about the United States is that we see ourselves as so different from everyone else. We see ourselves as, a developed nation. We see ourselves as progressive, or we see ourselves as, stuck in our good old ways, and we need to keep it that way. But we don't really have a community. We don't relate to our communities that well. And that's not in all circumstances, but across the board, in most of the places I've been in, we don't really see our similarities, and we judge each other based on our differences and comparisons that we make. So I would love a culture change that really emphasizes those similarities that we have within each other.
Some weird ideas. One of his ideas is that there are doorways to other dimensions, but we don't know how to look for them. So he does some digging, and he finds a way, and strange things start to happen. And so he decides, having seen a doorway, that he's going to go through the doorway after someone who is used to going through the doorway goes through it. So he's going to try and follow someone into another dimension. And he does that briefly for about 10 seconds, and it scares the hell out of him. Mm-hmm. And he had taken only one step in, and he turned around and took one step out. And then he goes home and starts to think about it. So after a period of time, he gets himself together, and he gets himself ready, and he goes looking for a doorway of his own. And he finds one, and he steps through it. And on the other side, the tale begins, because he's out there looking, and he's trying to figure out what this other world is. He can see it, but he doesn't understand it. After a while, he gets used to it. It's like you're used to sitting in a chair the way you are right now. And along the way, he sees something way out in front of him, and it's moving, but it's real big. He doesn't know what it is, but it is huge, because it's a long way away. And so he starts to follow it. And after several days, he gets close to this thing, and he realizes that it's a human, but it's very big. It's like 11 or 12 feet tall. It's big. So he's following it, not knowing that the thing that he's following knows that it is. Finally, it sits down and waits, and he approaches it, and he sits down about 50 feet from it. They smile at each other, and the head he's smiling at is this big. And they don't have any language in common.
what I see as radicalism is just being essentially different, different than the norm, and different than what society, or a lot of people in society, would like to go along with, because it's easier, maybe because it doesn't take as much thought. But that's why I consider myself a radical, because I love thinking. I love challenging myself. I love challenging others. My idea of progress is definitely moving forward, which doesn't mean for me necessarily growth. I don't think growth in a quantitative sense is always progress, but I think that growth in quality, in the quality of our lives especially, and the quality of our interactions, can be definitely progress. And so a society doesn't need to build things to make progress, and doesn't need continuous economic development to make progress. Maybe it does in the case of capitalism, and in the case of our current political system, it might need economic growth to be what a lot of people consider progress. But for me, progress does not include growth all the time.
He takes him over a mountain and down into a valley. And in the valley, they're both in the valley, very close to each other. All of a sudden there's a great clamor. And there are thundering horses. And men yelling at each other and shooting each other and trying to kill each other. And they're standing right in the middle of it. It's going on all around them. But nothing seems to touch him. And they go on. They just go right on through, keep right on doing what they were doing, getting farther and farther away. And he's following this huge giant. And a few days go by, and he realizes he's on a path. There's a trail here. We're going somewhere. He doesn't know where yet, because they can't communicate. Going and going and going. And the fabric that they're standing on is rent. And there's this huge hole, and he's looking down at it, and he's looking into the sky. And he realizes that whatever it is that he's looking at, it's an illusion. A couple days go by, and suddenly now he's beginning to see shoulders, and heads, and necks, and heads. Tick, 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 all around him. Fields of them. All over. People. And suddenly they clear a horizon, and there's this huge building in front of him. And a huge, huge door. Maybe a 3-story door. Huge door. This giant walks up and bam, bam, bam on the door, and the sound is incredible. This great door opens very slowly. Standing in the doorway is a little man, very small. Perfect man, very small. Only came up to the pilgrim's waist, so much smaller than the giant, not even over his ankles. And he turns and he looks at the giant and he makes a sound. And the giant recognizes it, and they're conversing. The little man looks over at Pilgrim and says, in English, "Who are you?" He says, "My name is Pilgrim." He said, "What do you seek?" He said, "The truth." The little man said, "You're welcome." He said, "How do you learn? Are there books?" He said, "Oh, the library. It's on the next floor. It's as big as this floor. Is there anything that you wanted?" And as he's talking, he sees the giant. He's walking away towards the door on the other side of the building. And he says to the little man, "Where's he going?" He said, "He's going to Heaven's Gate." He said, "What language were you speaking?" He said, "It doesn't matter." He said, "He doesn't need your language. All he needs is your thought." So they scoop up these two, and they go to this huge cliff. He's standing right on the edge of this cliff, and there are hundreds of angels around him walking back and forth, making all kinds of noise. And he looks out over this cliff, and it is black from left to right as far as you can see. There's nothing. Zero, black everywhere. And you're standing on the edge of a cliff that goes down forever. and they're nervous. And suddenly there's this little guy next to him. He says, listen, man, just sit over here by the rocks. It'll be cool. You'll be all right. He disappears. And so Pilgrim didn't know what to do. He just kind of snuggled up next to the giant and looked out into the nothing. And suddenly, way out there in the nothing, there was this little tiny speck of light. Meanwhile, these angels are just dancing all around, talking, arguing with each other, all kinds of shit happening. And this little speck of light is getting bigger and getting bigger. It's getting bigger. Pretty soon, it's about a quarter the size of the moon. And then, a little bit of time goes by, it's about as big as a dime. And then it's about as big as a quarter. And suddenly, all the angels stop talking. And they're looking out into this nothing as this thing gets bigger, 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 bigger. And finally, they can see that it's the back of God's head. Just like that, he's gone. There's a great commotion above. Suddenly, there's this little man. He's saying, listen, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. I'm going to take you back up where you were and let you off. The next thing you know, they're back where they were looking at Heaven's Gate. And the giant turns around and he starts to head down the mountain. Pilgrim is all shook up and cold to boot because it's really cold where they're at. And so the giant's got a real head start. And in the morning in the light, Pilgrim's on his knees puking, really scared because he's lost the giant and he has no clue where he's at. And as he's bent over on the ground, looking at the puke that he's just puked, there's this voice next to him. And he turns and looks and there's this little man. He says, listen, Peter's going to be all right. The giant's going to slow down. He's going to wait for you. You'll be fine. You'll be all right. Relax. And he turns to leave. Pilgrim says, who are you? He said, oh, they call me Jay. And he's gone. And that's the story of Heaven's Gate. That's kind of some of the things that I read.
Yeah, I like that.
Wait, you read that?
And other things.
Yeah. That's really good.
No, that's all right. It doesn't sound as good as it reads.
No, you're a good storyteller.
Yeah.